Right.
Do you know how One Direction was founded? Do you understand how it started?
It was a super group that they put together from like a contest, right?
Well, we were watching last night the K-pop. We were watching
BTS.
BTS. It's a Korean. They were on SNL.
Yeah.
They were the big Korean group.
Okay.
They're like huge, apparently. I don't know.
Okay.
But Britain's Got Talent, or I could be wrong with what it's called. They've got like their top 4 like male singers in their competition. Well, the group that didn't make the top like 3, they put into like a foursome to make a band, and they made them One Direction. I met in Rhode Island a couple years ago the dude who was the first guy who got voted off before getting One Direction.
Like first runner up.
Yeah,
sort of
he's
thing.
a brilliant. He played piano, and his voice was an angel, and he just sang, and it was like a drunk night, like Piano Man. We were at a house party, and all the women's panties fell off completely, and I was
something about a Piano Man.
I really do. I mean, like I do sing, but I do stand up more. But like I watch so much more singing than I watch stand up.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that singing was a thing of yours. That's so awesome.
Oh yeah.
You just want sometimes what you don't have. Like I feel like every athlete wants to be a rock star. Every rock star like hangs with the thing. You know what I mean? Like it's always like the respect for something that you're not. But
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I didn't know you were a singer.
Yeah.
What's your like genre?
I mean,
what do you do?
I like big like diva hits for the most part. Like a lot of like Whitney Houston, Deborah Cox. That's what I like. Yeah.
Well, I might as well introduce us, everyone. Welcome to the SAP. Dave Neal with Tasha Courtney and Liz Glaser. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We've been chatting all day. We had a stand-up show earlier, and then we were listening to music that I can't play on the iTunes. So we just like finally decided to turn that off and start talking. Why are you petting me? What's
because
going on?
you're covered in dog hair. I was trying to be.
Well, thank you.
I was trying to be discreet about it, but okay.
Thank you so much for doing, first of all, the stand-up show today and then the podcast.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
It's a full day of us, and I'm very sorry.
I'm thrilled.
I'm still drunk.
Okay.
Are you a little tipsy?
It's important that people know I'm turning 34 in a couple of weeks. I don't drink anymore. I have 10 drinks a month. I had 7 of them today. You know what I mean? I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like today everyone who listens knows we've been doing this Mimosa stand-up show. This is our 3rd month running. It's pretty much been.
It was a great show.
Thank you. Of course, yeah.
It was really fun.
Thanks.
But
despite all of the like trouble and traffic, for those of you listening that didn't watch my Instagram story, they were repaving the road that this
like exactly right outside of the venue.
While it was happening.
Listen, I'm a positive guy.
Sure.
I like positivity. You know, no matter what, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We're driving over. It's 10:15 in the morning, right? It's an 11:30 show, right? So it's maybe 10:30 in the morning. Tasha's finally ready. She's done all of her Instagram stories. 7th take. She's waiting for it. She's waiting for the chorus.
I was trying to get an Elton John song on because I felt like, sorry, I'm chewing. I felt like this past week I've been sort of negative Nancy because I just haven't felt really great. And I feel like I was like negative on my Instagram stories. And so I was like, you know what? I feel fucking good. I'm wearing a dress. I put makeup on today.
Sure.
So I was like, Elton John, the bitch is back.
Yeah.
I was like, I've got it's a jam.
Okay.
But I was like, oh man, this is a good song for today because I feel good.
Yeah.
And
you're back.
Bitch is back.
Yeah.
Liz, I've got the door open. I got all my things in my hands. I've already got 9 liters of champagne packed. I got a gallon of OJ. I've got all the equipment, everything you need for the show. I've got it all packed. The door's open. I'm ready to go. And she's waiting for the beat to drop on her Snapchat.
Well, because I didn't. First of all, I'm unfamiliar with the music.
Right.
Section of Instagram. I can do boomerang music, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Normally, I just like do a thing and add the music after because I know how to do that. But I was like, if you do the music section, then you can get like cool effects on it, like the glitch or whatever. I don't know. I was trying to do it. It didn't work out. It didn't work for me. Yeah. But I didn't realize that you could scroll to the chorus before instead of waiting. So I was like standing here waiting for the chorus to record, and then I pressed it and it didn't work. Never mind.
Sure.
Long story short, because it doesn't matter. 50 takes later, I was like, why can't I get this to work?
Well, we live a mile east of the venue. We drive up to the venue and we see that the road's blocked, and it's like, fine. NBD, right? I'm going to go around the corner. I'm going to take the side roads.
Yeah.
And then every side road, the road is blocked. And I go, we got a parade. We got a parade that we're going to have to deal with. And then the closer I get, I realize it's worse. The only thing worse than a parade is that they're going to repave the whole fucking neighborhood, which is what they were doing. And I go, look, we got to call the show off. We just can't do it. I'm not putting 9 liters of champagne to nobody. We're not doing the show. I was completely cynical, like, no show. It's over. Blah, blah, blah. I text the group. I'm like, look, traffic sucks. Blah, blah, blah. And then Tasha's like, chill the fuck out. And we find parking.
Yeah.
And then we realized, but literally they were paving 5 feet away from the venue. Of course, you were there. You saw it.
Yeah.
And smelled it.
And smelled it. And not only that, but I mean, literally during my opening set, the ground was shaking.
The whole show. It wasn't just you. The whole show, we were like getting a massage. We were like in massage chairs while like the earth movers rolled by.
Yeah.
But we did it. You went up early and you murdered it. You had a great set.
Yeah, you really did have a great set.
Guys.
I like to just tease this to our audience listening because they like to know what's going on with this and how the show went. And we had several podcast listeners drive in from Lancaster, 50 minutes away, no traffic, 50 minutes. That's a 2-hour drive during the week. And then Redlands, which is an hour and a half or more. One drove. They were in San Diego yesterday, drove up to Redlands and then drove over.
They were getting a lot of miles in.
They literally, and I'm like, do you know what you're coming to see? Like, what are you doing? Like, that's crazy that anyone.
But it was a fun show.
It was a great show.
Yeah.
We love our listeners. They really like go the extra 100 miles for us.
Right.
Like,
the
thank
best
you so much.
I love.
Guys.
We have Chase came for the third week in a row, the third month in a row. The college kid, right?
Yeah, I remember.
He's from my home street in Rhode Island.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's my brother's friend. And then we had Vic came. Now Vic knows she's already listening. Vic's the first one to download this podcast. I should used a fake name. She's already hooked up with previous comics we've had on stand-up shows. I'm just going to say it. Vic's like all about, you know what I mean?
Vic is going to be calling you like, edit that out.
That's why this month she was like, I'm not dating white guys anymore. She won't probably like warned me like, don't give me any of your white fucking dudes. But anyway, the point is that if I can have podcast listeners also try to hook up with my single comedy friends.
Sure,
right? Why not?
Yeah, you're a matchmaking service.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Liz,
we should rebrand.
Yeah.
That's all we want to do. Like your boy Dave, back in college, I was a social chair of my fraternity.
Really?
That's my job.
I did that for, I think it was like one semester, and I planned a date party. What?
Like a speed dating type thing?
No, like why? Were they called date parties?
When it's a social. When you're with another sorority, a sorority and fraternity.
No. It wasn't even like pairing. It was just like us, and then you could bring a date. But I'm trying to think if they had, for some reason, when I'm saying date party, it doesn't sound like the right
How old are we?
I'll
the
be
theme was like
40.
a couples kind of thing. Is
Yeah,
that what it was?
like I took my boyfriend at the time. I had a boyfriend in college. I'm a lesbian now, but like. I mean, I guess I always was a lesbian, but like it, I dated a guy.
It's still
in
testing
college.
the waters a little bit.
I think it was like I always knew that I was gay, but then in college I liked this guy, and I was 18 years old, and I had never dated women before that because I just like had never dated a person before that.
Yeah,
and so then we dated for 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like a major relationship.
And where did you go to school?
I went to Penn in Philly.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you, from New York, Liz.
Yeah. Well, I'm from New Jersey.
From Jersey.
Yeah, right.
The better
but right
parts
outside
the
of New York.
State,
same thing.
Yeah.
Almost.
Except if you say New York near there, then they're like, you're lying.
That's the same thing from Boston. It's like everyone's like, I'm from Boston. It's like, no, you're not. Where you're from?
Right,
They're like,
right.
New Hampshire. It's just you just say what you say.
It's the narcissism of small differences, I guess.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That'd be a great title for the show, The Narcissism of Small Differences.
I mean, I think
Write
it's
it
like
down.
a phenomenon.
Is that a real phenomenon?
Yeah.
Interesting. Now so you knew you were gay, but liked the guy enough to have that be a thing?
Sort
or how
of.
does that even work out?
I mean, like I grew up with parents who didn't approve of gayness, and I went to religious school, and so everything I was taught was like that being gay was wrong. And for the most part, I was like rule abiding. And so there was an inner dissonance around homosexuality for sure. And so then when I was in college and I dated this guy, it wasn't like I mean, it's hard to, I sort of feel like when I think and talk about that experience that I want to have the knowledge of the future and you know what I mean? Like infused into that moment in the past, because it's not that I knew any differently the level of my homosexuality. It's just that I was like, well, you're not supposed to be gay and you're not supposed to do what you're not supposed to.
Yeah, so there's like a suppression there, you know?
Yeah, like I was little. Yeah. You know, and I was like so trying to do the right thing, I think was what it was.
My best friend in college was a guy, we all knew he was gay.
Sure.
And no one cared, but for him, we don't know, like I don't want to judge how he grew up, but for him, he wasn't ready to come out. He was still dating women. He was banging. He was doing all of his things. We were like, cool, man. But then every once in a while, you'd hear that he like kissed a guy at our formal. And you'd be like, what the fuck? But like, if we just had known he was gay, we'd be like, oh, come on. The second he graduated, it kind of just all hit. He's like, I'm moving to Boston. I'm gay. And we're like, dude, we love you, man. And he was so shocked that we were there for him that I was like, I felt so bad for the pain. He must have felt wondering if we would even accept him.
Sure.
But I'm sure that that fear is real, where some people don't accept you. They still have to get around to their own.
Well, and it's just coming to terms with yourself, too. Yeah, like, all of that is a process.
Right. I think it was probably a little more of that. I don't know that I was concerned specifically about any person other than like my parents, you know, and so insofar as that was concerned, it wasn't like I needed so much the approval of my parents specifically as it was this idea of like, I don't want to do something wrong. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like, where it's not so much like the approval of a specific person, but rather like, oh my God, I'm doing something terribly wrong.
Do you think the times
like religiously, morally,
right?
Okay,
exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think this critical mass has hit, or that's completely changed, or do people? Is this like still a common thought?
I mean, I have no idea. I've only ever thought inside of my own brain, and so I would never purport to like make a claim about like what the critical mass is or isn't.
How do you feel in hindsight?
About myself?
Just about the fact that like the struggle with coming out and then where you are now for people that might feel the same way, but they're just not there. Like they haven't been able to have, you know.
I mean, I appreciate every single part of my history. Like, you know, I have a joke about my relationship with my ex-boyfriend where, you know, I say like, and this comes from truth, that people are like, were you faking it? Like, do you wish you didn't do it? And it's like, no, it was like a 3.5 year relationship. Like, I'm not like the Daniel Day-Lewis of heterosexuality. I wasn't like faking it. I can have an appreciation for a connection with another person, but it's just that at some point I realized that I preferred having sex with women. And then at a later point, I realized that I preferred having sex that I preferred having. And that is my coming out story. Like, but like wanting to fast forward any part of that, just like, I don't know. It isn't
That's
the
all
point.
Part of your journey.
Yeah. Like I don't really think so much about that stuff in general. You know, like, I think it's probably because for me, I used to think a lot about it. So like stand up for me and acting and writing and doing all of the things that like we do now for me was a second career. My first career, I taught law school. It was much more like traditional in the sense of this was like the thing that my parents wanted me to do. It was like the reason that I went to college or law school or whatever. And in that career, there was such a track. It was so linear. And, you know, like I had some success in it. And I mean, I was grateful for that. But like, there was when I was in that career, because it was like I was a tenure track professor, which meant that there was, you know, a certain timeline. And then after a certain number of years passed, I would or wouldn't get tenure and that kind of thing. So it was like very much this like timeline based existence. And in doing stuff that I do now, and I guess, I don't know, like it's hard to find like one word for it, I guess, but like entertaining, you know, but as a professional, I try to remain as patient as I possibly can, if for no other reason than I think that that's really what I retired from when I gave up law teaching. Like, sure, I gave up that job, but I think I gave up like a way of thinking about the world. You know, I spent a lot of time being impatient. I spent a lot of time trying to prove that I was right. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that anymore.
There's a lot of structure too that comes with, I'm assuming teaching, and also with the law world where now we're in the world where it's funny, be funny on stage.
There's like room for experimentation, not just like in comedy, but like in your life. Like if you want to try this thing or dabble in this thing, you're allowed to do it, versus like the point A to point B.
Yeah. And I mean, I imagine that there are people, I don't know that they would be listening to this specifically, but like were they to be listening to it, that might argue that even in law teaching or in law careers, there's also experimentation. And I don't doubt that for somebody that may be the experience. It just wasn't my experience in that career, you know?
You know, I also wonder, and by the way, I did want to mention for Tasha's sake how excited I was to have you on this podcast, because I don't really know you well, but I and I've told you this before on stage, and I know it probably, you just take it with a grain of salt, but like I really connected with Liz.
Yeah.
I met her just here.
It's
you know,
true.
we did these mics that are during the daytime where you do a longer set and you just hear someone like pour their heart out, and it's, you know, there's no laughs, there's no audience, and it's a really long amount of time on stage, and I'm just kicking shit on stage, and I really connected
vulnerable.
with but I really connected with you, and I really was like, this is like, I felt like a friend that I didn't know yet, but like
I felt that too.
Oh, and
you guys are probably like soul friends.
Listen,
Yeah,
Liz,
I think so.
I'm not secure enough to like believe you, but I really meant. Do you know what I mean? Where like I really meant it, and then like she was like, "Oh, no, I feel the same way." I was like, "No, listen, I just ate shit on stage," but like, I really, because you've only seen me literally bomb on stage. You've only seen me do these
that's not
like
entirely
but,
true.
You know, it kind of is. Like it's those no feedback sort of rooms where I'm just kind of like, you know. Anyway, I don't want to make it about me. The point was is that like it was so good to like introduce, to like have you guys meet, and then also
and
it's
then, really nice to meet
It
you.
is nice to meet
but
you too.
I also have a trillion questions. So you you go to law school.
Yes.
You go to Penn. You go to law school.
Yes.
And are you just I mean, is it the same way with your sexuality where you're in the closet because like this is the way life's supposed to be? Did you feel the same way with your career choice? Like
That's
there's no other
question.
options?
I mean, I think there is a similarity, and I've been working on, you know, connecting some of my sexuality jokes to some of my, you know, coming out of like law teaching jokes. And I think you're right to notice that there's a similarity there. But it's dissimilar in the sense that I always knew that I was gay, meaning I always knew that I had an attraction toward women, but I didn't always know that I didn't always know that being a comedian was a job or being an actor was a job. Like, obviously I had seen people on television every now and then. I wasn't like a huge stand-up fan as a kid or anything like that. My parents weren't either. But I remember seeing like Margaret Cho as an example of someone, Joan Rivers, like on television, like in my, you know, den growing up. But I think I thought that people who found themselves on television were just like almost like aliens, you know, that there was no...
Or like lottery winners.
Yeah,
it's just like very impractical.
There's no coming up. They just were there.
Yeah,
they were just the Chris Rock selling out Madison Square Garden. They weren't the open micer Chris Rock.
And specifically, I mean, I think you're right to note that there is this kind of like, you know, zero to stardom thing that I was perceiving. But I think in addition to that, I just never even considered that those people were children who had made choices and had took action on them and had committed to those actions. Like none of the kind of processes of becoming something, you know, that I was familiar with, like whether it was as a child from like making a decision and then, you know, recognizing that like, oh, I wanted to go in the pool. So I put on a swimsuit and I went in the pool. Like none of that kind of logical progression entered into my mind about any career that wasn't one that my parents like.
Well, because it's not a well-laid path.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
not like they tell you when you're little, like, oh, if you want to be in Hollywood, you have to go do this and X,
And
Y, and Z and get an agent and
specifically-
take classes. Like,
Sure.
nobody
Right.
spells it out for you how
Sure.
to do it. It requires a huge leap of faith
Yeah.
versus just like following what's easy. I mean, I'm so guilty of that. I did that in college.
Yeah.
First of all, I was like massively depressed, like my junior and senior year of high school. So I was pretty much useless.
Yeah.
And kind of like let my parents steer the way for me. Like they were like, okay, you're artistic, so you should go to fashion design school, because they know I liked clothes and was artistic.
got it.
So like
Okay.
we applied to like a few different schools, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I just followed the thing that was like most laid out for me.
Yeah.
I didn't know what else to do except like do what everyone else was doing, go to college and pick a major. And
so I connect with that. And that I think was definitely true for me. And like my parents are children of Holocaust survivors and were very like, I think affected by that specific kind of anxiety, like very much like nobody can ever take your education away from you, with the clear implication that like they're going to take other things away from you.
No, you're right.
You know what I mean? Right. Like that type of mentality. And so, I was like good with words and good in like writing stuff. And so, going to law school seemed to be like the most reasonable path in light of that. And I mean, I want to say this too, that like, it would be so silly of me to regret any of that because I am supported continually by the years that I spent doing that. So like I'm able to pursue this stuff with, a lot of attention because I did that first. And so, it's not to say that if it would have been otherwise, then I would have, you can't imagine I guess you can imagine a counterfactual universe, but like, how would we know how things would turn out?
I love like the butterfly effect of life and like, like for me, I didn't start stand up till I was almost 27. Like, oh my gosh, I'm an old fuck. We had Tasha Rain on the podcast last month or last week who said she started doing adult films when she was 21, which was ancient for an adult film star.
Sure.
If you don't start at 18, you don't have any success. And you factor in all these like, well, when did I start? Stand up's so hard to quantify that those 10,000 minutes or whatever, those tipping point hours, whatever.
Right.
10,000 seconds. I could use 10,000 hours is too long. I did 8 minutes today. Okay, I can't. You start to like. It's hard with comedy to be like, how like, for every experience I had in college, every little thing it leads up to who you are on stage. Every story in every little bit. But it's not like other career paths where you study first. Like if you want to be a doctor, it's so easy to know, and it's not easy to be a doctor, but it's easy to know exactly what you need to do to get that degree. With stand up, it's a different combination of skills.
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to make too many claims about careers that I haven't had just because, I think we don't really know, right?
Yes,
like,
I make all the claims, okay? I make all the claims.
Yeah,
but I appreciate that you don't.
What were you saying last? He said something last week, like he put him in a room and like you'd have a same success rate. No,
I'll figure it out with Google. I'll figure it out what your issue is. I'm
Interesting.
Not. Yeah, I don't.
Well,
unless you're a specialist.
You seem to be like handy and stuff. Like I don't. No, well, you were showing around the house like things that you've built. Like so, I think that maybe that is true that you would be able to figure stuff like that out. I don't have that kind of confidence or necessarily even like curiosity / personality trait. Like I believe in myself, and if I really want something, that I'll be able to, chip away and make it happen. But I don't have that kind of like cavalier confidence of like, oh, I could figure it out. But you've like done things, and I think the handiness is.
Well, I just go on YouTube and figure it out. But you're an Ivy League graduate law professor.
But I think in some ways,
don't compare my barn door I built, which Tasha will tell you is not level. But don't worry about her.
Well, but I think I don't know that. I mean, I understand the joke, but I also think that there is something to it, because I think that like, whereas sure, it's impressive to go to like some schools and to get some degrees and to have some jobs, and like I get that because I was chasing prestige for a lot of my life. But I think there's also the opposite point, which is that like the more able one is, and I can say this at least in my case, to get into some of those schools, and I don't think this works 100% of the time, but it's like I've read this before also, that like it's not like, yes, there's a certain smartness, I guess, but there's also a certain conformity and rule followingness that like attends success in those kinds of ways. And so like the kind of careful attitude, I think
not
that
rule breaker
and
mover and shaker kind of people.
Right.
Now, something I've been looking into is the fixed mindset, where if you're a perfectionist, if you can't do something perfectly, you don't want to try new things.
Sure.
And I think that's like with Tasha, like graduated super high, GPA and all those things, worrying to be silly. like worrying to like with comics, we kind of beat the shame out of us where it's like, we'll try new things here and there. But yeah, you when you start to surround yourself with everyone who's like hyper focused on success and this and that, you're almost afraid to do something stupid.
Yeah.
But I think all we can do is stupid things in order,
you don't give yourself the opportunity to get outside your comfort zone, which is like where you do all your growing and learning.
Right, for sure. This is one of my first memories, and it's the first memory I have on stage. I think it speaks to this perfectionism, which is, so I was 4 years old. I was in a ballet class, and I was in there for one reason and one reason only, which was that there was Haagen-Dazs ice cream after ballet every single week.
I'm in there with you.
Yeah, sure. It was like in the same building in New Jersey where I took ballet lessons, and I wasn't aware that there was going to be a recital. And I wasn't like super paying attention in ballet class. I never felt like skilled in ballet class. I just showed up because it was the thing that my mom carpooled me to, and then the ice cream that I mentioned before. And so anyway, so it's the day of the recital, and I was so nervous because I'm like, what have we learned so as to like put on a performance? My grandparents are coming. They survived the Holocaust for this. Like, this is going to be so bad. And all I had to do was hold the hand of the little girl in my class to my right and to my left. And there were going to be two circles of little 4-year-old girls walking in a circle on a stage. And that was what we were doing for like our part of this performance. And I was so nervous because I was just like, that's not a show. Like, that's not a good show. Why would anyone come to see that? And so rather than do the less perfect version, which was just walk, I decided to stand in the middle of the stage in between both circles of little girls and cry my eyes out. And I've told that story before, in stand-up and storytelling settings. And at first when I told it, that was sort of the end of it. But then when I started telling it, and like, the thing that happens when maybe you like remember it or you remember it differently because you're telling it or whatever. But I seem to remember that when I noticed that I was crying as much as I was, I remember liking it. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, I'm the show right now. Like, this is like my moment. And I remember making the conscious choice to cry harder. And so it's like that. I think that speaks to the perfectionism that you're talking about, of just like I recently was reminiscing with my parents about that specific story, thinking I'll be 40 this summer. So that means that this story happened about 36 years ago. Okay. And I told my parents, I was just like, remember that day? And they were like, let's talk about something else. That was a really sad day. And I thought that was so strange because I'm like, really? Like 36 whole years later, you weren't the person on stage? Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
But I think that my parents, I love my parents truly, and they really are good parents. But like, there is this perfectionism that I think that they have that I don't think is a fault of theirs. I think it was just like inherited from their parents or whatever it was.
The inability to like, I'll never see my mom sort of laugh at herself. Like, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, she'll belly laugh once in a while at something stupid, but like really just enjoy the moment. There's always the kind of that feeling, even if no one's watching, that like she's got of her back in the day of her parents watching her, and it's like, you just feel bad for like,
but I think that, I share that also with my parents, and I think that like, I think my parents both would have been great performers. They both had like little bits of performing. I think like later it turned out I would learn that my dad was like in some movie in Israel, which I didn't know until like much later in life. And my mom was she still does it, but like, it's always been at like a level of like the temple or the school or something like that. Like, she sings, and she was a music teacher. Now she's a retired teacher. Like, so I think that they have these performance parts of their personalities, but they didn't like really do it in the same way that we do. And so I think that some of what happens, at least it has for me, is through continuing to go back on stage, some of the perfectionism, if not much of it, goes away. And I'll feel it every now and then when there's something super high stakes, like before today's show. Just kidding.
Hey, I don't know. That was a pretty big one. CAA was in the room.
Right. No, but I mean, and the thing is, like, one of the things I'm working on now, or I don't even know how like one works on this other than to just be aware of it and kind of do it. But like, I've noticed that like I'll be much more comfortable and then therefore better, in these like very low stakes environments. And then when it's like a higher stakes environment, like sometimes it'll go really well and that's great. But then sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I felt like I took like 80 steps back in my performance.
Because you let your own anxiety or perfectionism or whatever it is sabotage you.
Right.
Like you don't realize that it's happening until it's done and too late.
When what you really want is that detachment. That just like, I'm a fucking just do it. I've already done all the hard work.
That sweet spot, I think it is, between caring and not caring at all, right? Because it's like, you're right. It's like, I don't think of it as a detachment. I think there's a slight nuanced, like little friendly amendment.
Thread.
Yeah. Where it's not a detachment, it's almost an unattachment. Whether or not that's a word, I don't care. But I love this.
I'm with you.
I mean it to distinguish because like I've read a lot of like attachment theory. I don't know if you guys, I mean, there's a wonderful book called Attached, which is a relationship book, but then there's also The Untethered Soul, which is a really great book.
We have Attached. We haven't read it. It's on the bookshelf.
It's so good.
We buy the
really
books
good.
and then we don't read it.
Okay. Yeah.
But we're listening.
Both of those are great. Both of those are great books. But there's like, kind of I mean, Oprah and Deepak like talk about this stuff of like, like wanting to have a less attached like outlook on the stuff that you do, where the thing that you're focusing on is, getting up on stage X number of times a week in our case, and listening back to your sets and writing down the things that worked and wanting to like work on certain stories and make set lists or, whatever, where the attention goes towards the building of the stuff that you want to express creatively, as opposed to the attention going to like, I want to get on the Tonight Show, or, I want this trophy, basically. And sometimes that stuff is hard for me, but I think that my prior career has been the biggest teacher for me of the distinction between those types of methods, I guess, or like approaches. Because in my first career teaching, first of all, getting the job, but second of all, like we would have to write these law review articles. That's like the currency of a law professor. And, you send them out, and different journals are different levels of prestige. And it's not so dissimilar from like, this show is better than that show, is harder to get onto, and you got to know someone to get this agent. And, it's all the same stuff. But like, ultimately, the people who I perceive to be the happiest and the most successful, and sort of the Venn diagram converged on the both for these people, were those who, sure, they had those things. They had the equivalent of the good agent and all of the, the wins and the trophies, but they seemed to be really loving what they were doing. And that was where I disconnected from the profession, because I was like, I had some of the trophies, but because I had them, I was more aware of the emptiness that went along with getting them. I was like, yeah, I get that my article appeared in this prestigious journal, but that's because I figured out the system of getting an article into a prestigious journal. And I don't mean that to undercut my performance to some, kind of unrelatable, self-deprecating way. I really don't mean that. I'm not saying they were bad articles. I'm saying my heart wasn't in it.
Sure.
And so when I think about like my stand-up and my writing and my acting these days, I really think of it as like, yeah, it would be great to get all the trophies, but like, I would rather like have a slower success route than one that was so fast that I was left with these existential crises after the moments of getting the thing. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the pilot to I'm Dying Up Here. Did you watch that ever?
Yeah,
Yeah. But like that pilot, right? Which it's okay to spoil a pilot for a show that's no longer on the air. I hope.
I was so mad it got canceled. I actually liked the show.
It's a great show, but
good book too.
But very unrealistic, right?
I don't know. I mean, in terms of the comedy scene.
Well, didn't you say that he goes from like open mic
No,
to like
no.
fame
That's
it?
crashing.
Okay.
Crashing. He's like friends are already lying in 3 episodes. Like,
Right.
that's bullshit. But I'm dying up here is the comedy scene in like the 70s. But it's,
I don't know the extent to which it is or isn't unrealistic to answer the question
book
about
was
that.
super factual,
Right.
but the show had a lot of they had to make it
Well,
fictional.
I think like just to go back, I mean, we can kind of straddle both shows. Like with respect to Crashing, I think that there's something. I mean, I have a lot of things to say about Crashing, I guess, but I think like in terms of the unrealism of Crashing, I almost think that show wants you to assume that certain leaps have been taken in terms of time that the show just doesn't tell you, particularly
because they don't want everyone to be bored to death while 8 years pass by.
The first 10 seasons, he's hating himself. I totally get the sort of artistic license to like speed shit
but
up.
I didn't think that the friendship element with famous comedians was that unrealistic, because I think that like I've seen that happen to people where it's like, okay, this is like somebody who you know from your scene, and then all of a sudden they've got like some famous friend and they're going on the road with the famous friend and stuff like that. So I've like experienced examples of that being true.
I'm a little bitter towards that because I do want to be friends with those guys and I do want those mentors.
Well, then you got to unattach. That's how you get them.
Boom.
You should read the book. That's how you got to get your vibration, Dave, to a point that it matches the people and the things that you want in
I just
your
see
life.
the codependent inside of me sees these guys. Mm-hmm. So like say Bert Kreischer, right? He does a stand-up show. I bet you 90% of our audience doesn't even know who I'm talking about, even though he's selling out theaters and arenas around the world.
Everyone knows who Bert Kreischer is.
I mean, no, they don't really. I mean, I don't know. Like the people don't know who Bill Burr is. It's fucking insane to me. But like also like use Bill Burr because like you should know him. If you don't, Google him. I'm
like sensitive to that kind of stuff because 9 times out of 10, the person who everyone's like those polls where it's like people more likely know like the winner of American Idol than they do some Supreme Court justice. I'm like, what about the people who know neither of the people who you're asking? So like a lot of times that's
or like the people who know enough to not pick up the phone to answer your poll.
Yeah, well, that's
but anyway,
true
like so like not to name drop, but like I was at a show and it was a black night. It was an urban show. There's no white guys there, and I was there, and Judd Apatow walks in, and like if you don't know him, he's just made every comedy in the last 15 years,
including
right?
Crashing.
Yeah, so, there you go, boom,
right.
And I said, hey, what's going on? I started chatting with, I knew I could chat with him because there was no other, like if you're going to be in an elevator or like a small room with one of these guys, you're going to treat them as your peers. If I saw Bill Burr, I'd be like, oh, I'm doing this fucking mic. He'd be like, oh shit, no way, like oh, you hanging? Okay. There's totally like that peer aspect to it.
So what happened?
Well. Oh, we chatted for a while, and he was a nice guy. Told him I was open for a dude he used to work with, and this and that. It was totally cool. Yeah. Totally cool. No, but I always wasn't going to ask him for anything. But it was a nice. Yeah, of course. It was a nice. Like I'm not talking like 10 or 15 minute long conversation. Like his people were like, "Oh, should we go?" It was like the night of the Emmys. He had a tuxedo on. Like he had come to do a set. He was a nice guy.
Yeah.
And I think most conversations with other comedians would go that way. But we live in a town where like if I'm hanging out, there's going to be 15 other comics looking at Bill Burr in the off chance that Bill Burr looks back at them, and then they're going to go talk to him. It's like hyper everybody. So it's like in not wanting to be that guy, I play it so cool where it's like, bro, it's like almost like dating. If that chick's not going to come up to me, I'm not going to harass her.
But I think that's similar to dating. And again, I'm not an expert, but from my experience, like I was single for many years. I was single and talking about it for many years, but it took like truly being okay with myself in order to then, whether it's vibrationally match or however you want to frame it, like somebody who would be a good partner for me. And it was that moment of like not caring. And again, I think it's not a detached, because it's not like detached makes me think like aloof and kind of like I'm too good for something. Whereas unattached, or whatever the appropriately conjugated word to mean that would be, is like, yeah, it's really important to me. And so I'm going to, with humility, put my head down and do my own work. And in the relationship context, it's like work on myself, so that I'm happy on my own and so that I'm like able to like make room for another person in my life who I'm not like like clawing at in order to be happy.
But you want to be able to add value to, like, you want, if Bill Burr, you want him to walk by and hear you crushing on stage. So you can be like,
sure.
Hey, how are you?
But I think that comes from many years of getting up and knowing that you can crush and almost like forgetting that Bill Burr is watching.
Exactly.
You know, and that's like, I mean,
or not needing Bill Burr's approval.
Right. Whereas,
you know, like, it'd be nice to have it, but I don't need that because I've got my own.
I think that's correct. And I've had like moments in my own career where it's like, oh, I guess like if I look back on it, then it's like that person saw me and, you know, that ended up being a really big deal for me because if I look back at my calendars, like this date happened from that and this one and that one. And then I got to open for them and, you know, whatever. But it's like, it was from a moment when I really was not caring about that. And I've had many other moments where I'm like, please like me. And it doesn't
and
go
it completely bombs.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's such
and they never call you back.
Right.
It's so strange because it's like you do want to be liked by everyone, but also like a don't give a fuck mentality. Like I do want to be liked by everyone, but I'd rather be me than to conform. Like if someone says, if you do this joke, they'll like you.
Right.
Go fuck yourself.
Well, it's all an energy thing. I remember when I first got on stage, literally, I mean, not like when I was 4 and crying with the ballet, but when I first did stand up, I was on a bill with other people who were improv teams. And so the person who was producing the show was like, hey, Liz, what's the name of your show? And because it was an improv bill. And so all improv shows have a name. And so I thought about it and rather than just saying like, my name's Liz Glaser, I'm just Liz Glaser, which is probably what I would say now because like we do stand up and that's how it goes. But I was like, okay, I'll think of a name. And so the name that I thought up was Everybody Loves Me. And the reason was that at the time, I like figured out, and it's something that I like to come back to because I can often forget it. It's like one of those, for me anyway, like very valuable truths that's also really slippery, you know, that when I'm with it, I'm like in, but then it can go away as fast as I thought of it in the first place. And so the thing with Everybody Loves Me was that I identified that the way that I am on stage that is the most successful, attractive, whatever adjective you want to insert, was when I assumed that everyone in the crowd was my fan already, like liked me, loved me, whatever.
Once you to succeed.
Yeah,
that's a
exactly
big thing
right.
That, like
exactly.
acting teachers will tell you about in the audition
casting,
room.
Right,
It's
we
like,
want you to do well. Right,
yeah, casting loves you. They called you in. They want you to succeed.
Right,
they're on your side.
Yeah, exactly. But like where I can actually believe that because what I learned or deduced for myself was that if I assume that everybody loves me, despite the fact that that could sound like conceited or narcissistic, I think it's actually the opposite. But if I assume that everybody loves me, then I take the work away from myself to make them love me, because why would I have to do anything to make people love me who already love me? Right. And so again, it's something that like when I'm able to hook into it, it's magical, which was the reason that I entitled the show that. Yeah.
Tasha, this
and
is
that's just good for like everyday life, because if you think about it, like in my world modeling,
right.
like, you know, there's always a lot going on that most of the time has nothing to do with me.
Of course.
But if I'm in a bad mood, if I'm having a bad day, and like who knows whatever's off for whatever reason, I don't know. But like on good days when like you hear a whisper, you don't think it's about you. You're just going with the flow and you're like, you know, it doesn't even faze you.
True, yeah.
But on a day when like you're in a funky mood and you like overhear a whisper or you see someone have an eye roll or whatever, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? I did something wrong. They're not happy.
True.
They're not happy with how this is going.
Right.
And like you attribute all of this negativity to you when so it is exactly like you said it not narcissistic at all. Like
it's
if
the
you
opposite.
can it's exactly
because
not,
you stop caring so much about yourself
and
because
assuming
you assume
that
it's
everything
all fine.
It's a beautiful mantra, assuming people love me.
Everybody loves me.
Everybody loves me. That'll definitely be the name of this podcast.
Oh yeah,
Everybody Loves Me with Liz Glaser.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And you know, the longer you do stand up, the more you start performing for people that actually do love you. I'm not saying that they don't in the first place, but like it almost becomes easier in the sense that
I think that's true.
It's an audience of people that already get you. Like the Jim Nortons of the world are vile creatures on stage. But once they find their crazy knuckleheads that love them, it's just amplified.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mike Birbiglia, I heard him recently. I don't remember if it was like a podcast or an interview. It doesn't matter. But like he was talking about how, you know, it's really fun to get to a point in your career where it almost feels like you're all just telling like one private joke, you know, like that, or not you're all, but like that he's sharing something and there's this shared identification because everybody there has like seen all the previous, you know, things that he's done, or if they haven't, then they get that everybody else has, or the person who brought them has. And yeah, there is this kind of everybody loves me mentality.
You got to do this show that I want to do, and I'm okay pitching it to the audience.
Sure.
Nobody steal this of our listeners. But I have this like This Is Not Happening style stand-up show where you take a truck, you drive out to the desert, you got a keg, tailgate down, and 10 people, and you stand around the keg and one person tells a story in front of everyone else, and then the person who's on deck for the next story, he's the one who pumps the keg, and during your story you just fill other people's beers up. So you get to tell your story in front of your friends, but in a way that's not superly, but it's produced in like a 3-camera way and like proper audio, and then when your story's up, everyone like whatever, you know, you get heckled, but not in a way that's like it's amongst comics. So if like someone
it is like very traditional storytelling if you think about like around the campfire.
Right, exactly.
It's like that's what it is. It's campfire. But it's like in this case, it's just you're pumping the keg and you're like and then you do your bit, you do your 4, 7, 8, 10, whatever how long it is, and then it's like and that's it. And the comics know when you dismount, and that's it, and that's a cut, and then it goes to the next one, and then everyone, you know, it's only like 8 or 10 people, but everyone gets their.
I'd love to be.
Wouldn't that be fun to do?
Yeah,
we gotta make that happen.
All right, sounds like a nice camping trip. Summer's right around the corner.
You're on the bill. We'll make it happen.
Thank you, Dave.
But thank you for being on my future show. It's on the Patreon, everybody. It's you know, and again, I'm well aware that I'm full of limitations. I try to stop myself. I used to be super self-actualizing, and like when I got into acting and this, I'd be like, I can figure it out, and I would always book all these random things, and then stand up kind of beat my dick in. And I'm trying to get back to that place where it's like, why wouldn't a headliner want to have me on the road with him?
Sure.
Why wouldn't so-and-so want to be my friend? But like, unfortunately, you know, you sign up for these mics or shows and you don't get the love that you want because it's just a room full of your peers trying to, in their own heads.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I've found, I can totally understand that, what you just said, that is very relatable to me. And then there are some moments when it just hits, and it could be at a mic, you know. I've had stuff pop from really like small things, like, oh, I did a mic and I got in off the lottery and I didn't think I even did that well, but this led to a big thing,
for sure,
you know. And so I don't know, I mean, I've found that like the win for me is leaving the house. You know, the win for me, like there was a SoulCycle instructor who I really love, and her name's Stevie. She teaches in New York. I'm sure it doesn't matter for the listeners, but like if you're ever in New York, you can take SoulCycle with Stevie. She's great. But she said a thing once in class. She was like, you can change your life, but you have to leave your apartment. And I thought that was such a wonderfully simple mantra, because like sometimes I don't feel like doing it. Like this week, which I was talking on stage a little bit about, you know, it was really hard for me. I had like the biggest thing ever in my stand-up career happen. I got to like feature away, you know, for 5 nights and get paid and like get a food stipend every day in a hotel. And like, it was, you know, like, okay, cool. But it like didn't go amazing. And then I came back and I felt like kind of down about it. And people were like, yeah, maybe you were just too smart for that room. And I'm like, well, I think if I was actually too smart, I would have figured out how to make it work, but fine. Well, maybe you should go perform for lawyers. And so then I performed for some lawyers and it didn't go that well either. And I get off stage from the lawyers and someone in the crowd is like, hey, did you ever think about doing the Moth? And then the next night I went and did the Moth and I scored second to last at the Moth. second to last only because the last place guy did not know how to operate a microphone. So like it was
what does
like
that mean? Score second to last? They rate your set?
The Moth has judging, right?
What?
You need to go see one of these Moth shows. I love the Moth.
They judge your stories?
That's the whole thing.
That sounds crazy.
But it's just storytelling. It really, and like what they put, so they do these small shows around town, right? That are like levels show. And like if you win one, then you can go to the next level. And then they do like a big show here in LA. And it's really cool. And then like all the best stories they put on the radio. It's on, what's the station again?
NPR.
This is why I knew you
89.9 local here.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think it's 89.9 in LA. Not that that matters. But NPR. And so I guess they do Moth stories all over.
Yeah, they do.
Like,
yeah.
So I knew you guys would like each other because Tasha's big into the Moth. And you got that, Liz has that NPR voice already. And then I was at Lake Tahoe.
Right. But that's the like the NPR voice. Like people saying like, oh, you would be great. Like this week was like, you should do this. And then the next day I go out and do it and like fail. And so that's all fine. You know, like I recognize that like I am on a journey and it's
life
just
is
one
trial and error.
like it's fine.
Yeah.
But it was a trying week in that way.
What is the takeaway from that? Like, what is the takeaway from having what you perceive to be the answers to your problems? Then you get them, and it's not quite.
Oh, I mean, I think it's. I think it's a little bit in process and remains to be seen. You know, I also think that there was a level of like not to say, oh, I would have done better if, but I think that like if it didn't start from a place of feeling like low, then probably the lawyer show would have gone better. Probably the Moth would have gone better. I think it's
almost like you're putting pressure on yourself because of it. You're like, I have to make up for this thing.
But who showed up? Mimosa show. We were fire audience. Come on.
Yeah.
Fuck the Moth.
That's very true. But I think it's also like the point I meant to bring from it, I guess maybe this being the takeaway, is like I don't really take it as a success or failure about like how the stuff went. It's just like instead of feeling low about it and staying inside about it, I did the next thing within a day of each of the things.
And you didn't get like your reward for it. Like a lot of times, when you do the work, you expect to get a reward. And when you don't get a reward, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I do have, I think, a lot of patience around this stuff. I think like, I don't know. I do think it comes from gosh, I don't really know where it comes from, but I think it has something to do with this being a thing I did later in life, you know? And but I guess like, it's hard to know exactly if that's right too, because I'll like talk to people who are my age or even younger who are just like, yeah, but like, you know, you're irrelevant in Hollywood if you're not this age. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm fine. Like, I don't think, I mean, I guess that also comes from like, I just don't perceive that whatever this is, whatever my brand is, like, I don't know any of that stuff, but like, I have confidence that if it's going to hit, it's not because I'm like young and pretty in it.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So I don't have, I'm like, what? Like, I'll keep working and it'll be fine. And I guess like, having a week where all of this stuff kind of is tried and failed is just the story of it. It's just part of how it all happened.
Yeah, I mean, like, say you take those, you know, your tightest 5 minutes in the world,
sure,
and you do America's Got Talent, and you find this crazy audience that loves you. Next thing you know, all this hard work smashes with audiences. I mean, it's amazing how sort of people need to be convinced as to why they're going to like something that's on stage. They need like if you're an audience member and you go, oh my gosh, I am in love with this musician. Mm-hmm. This is going to be amazing. You're bringing that optimism to the stage along with the whole audience. And that's just the battle comics face, is that even though we do want to imagine the whole audience loves us, wait till they actually do. Wait till they actually are living on every one of your breaths, and that you take that moment of silence and you can, you know, hear a pin drop, and then you hit them with the punchline, and they
I guess,
like it comes and goes, but it's like it will come to in a point where like
it's part of like fake it till you make it. Like it's part of that attitude. Like if you don't have them all loving you yet, like just imagine that they all love you. Well, and it's also
like the Lady Gaga quote of like, I've always been a celebrity. It's just that people didn't know it until they did.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, like I love that idea. And it's relatable to me anyway, because I think that at the same time as in, moments that stuff doesn't hit, I'm just like, I don't know, maybe this is never going to work. Like, I certainly have those moments, but then I'm also like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm like a pretty big deal.
And it's important to like know, okay, like this year, I don't think I've done a show this year where I had like the sweet spot of a packed room. Yeah. I don't think I've done one in a couple of years where I've really, and I'm like, I'm fine with it. I'll go up early, I'll host, I'll go up when no one's left in the room. I fucking headlined that Santa Barbara show, 15 comics in, everyone's gone, they're exhausted, they're mopping up in the back, and I'm like just picking at whatever meat is left on the bone. I'm like, okay, fine, because all the synapses, all the beats, all the tags, everything I want, I'm still working on. And when the audience is there, this is all going to be great. It's all, like all the training is done at that point. And like, it's, you know what I mean? It's like,
I think for me also, it's a matter of like getting to a point where I'm expressing what I want to express. And so I've had sets, like there was one night in Tahoe actually that like went pretty well. Like, people were like, oh yeah, that was great. And I was the one who was dissatisfied with it because I was like, I don't think I really said what I wanted to say. And, I was having this realization after the trip, because during the trip, some like younger comic messaged me on Facebook, because I guess we had done a show a few years ago, and he was like, I just wondered if I could like ask you a few questions about stand up. And I was like, sure. So we were on the phone. I was like getting my steps in outside, whatever. And I ended up like telling a story to him in the hopes of like inspiring him in some way, but it was like, this true story of how things of how like a certain set of circumstances came to be. And I realized after the weekend, I was like, I'm pretty sure that the most satisfying performance I had all weekend was telling him on the phone that story. And I think it's not about, at least for me, like, yeah, adoring fans, that's great, I guess. Like, money is great. But it's like, I want to get there by way of actually communicating what I want to say. Like, if I got there, if someone was like, here, read these jokes, they're gonna kill. You'll be great.
That's not as fulfilling.
It's not. I would still do it if someone's like, we'll put you on TV, we'll make you, give you money.
I've been offered that. I've been offered other people's jokes.
Oh, interesting.
To open for them. Like, here, just do these jokes. They work. And I go, sorry, that's just
oh, interesting. I would still do it. I mean, I still think it's acting. Like
it's just not fulfilling.
Yeah, it's just a different.
It's a job,
right?
It's just.
But you're right. Like sometimes someone heckles and you have a zinger and it gets a crazy pop by the audience, and it's like, well, but that's not the bit that I wanted you to laugh at. It sounds kind of like petty if you're listening, you don't understand what we're talking about. But it's like, no, you just want the respect for what you've been working on. And
I guess so. I mean, I happen to not mind hecklers that much. I ran a show in New York for a year called Say Everything, which was inviting hecklers to say whatever they wanted. And I think it was like really great training ground. I ended up getting representation in LA on the basis of how I handled a heckler. Oh, no so way. Like I have a lot of love for hecklers because it's like been a big part of my career. But I get what you're saying insofar as it's like, but I just mean like, I like telling a single narrative when I get on stage. That is my preferred mode. It's not as fulfilling to me to be like, here's my set list, here are the jokes. Like that I like less. To me, it's more fun. Like I have a joke that I really like, which is that if you want me to see an email, find a way to put it in my sent mailbox, because that's the only one that I check reliably. I think it's a good joke and it's like connectable to me because of like the narcissism of, going back and rereading an email and being like, wasn't I amazing at sending this email? Like, aren't I the best emailer? And that's like, it's like I don't have to do anything all day because I can just reread this over and over and over again. And I've done that. But it's more satisfying for me when that joke comes in a particular story after I have told the audience and communicated the beat of the story in which I sent an email to a person, right? It's just, for me, that's like more the way that I talk, because I don't like, there are comedians who are just like, hey, here's a joke, there's a joke, here's a bit. And I think that's great. It's just like never been me. Like I didn't do stand up knowing anything about stand up. I did stand up because I had a crush on an improv instructor and I invited her to coffee, and because I was very caffeinated at the meeting for coffee, she interpreted that as stage presence, offered me 10 minutes on her show, and then I was like, what are you even doing? And she's like, do you want to do it? And I was like, will you be there? And she was like, yeah. So that's why I did it. Like, it's just like, I think if somebody's coming at stand up because they're like, I love jokes. I've been telling jokes. I've been writing jokes my whole life. That's amazing. It's just not me.
Yeah. I hear you. It's a lot of art is someone who just wants attention and validation, but it doesn't have to be in a needy way. It's just like, look, I want some fucking respect around here, so I'm going to tell you how I feel about X, Y, and Z.
I guess so.
And you might have been brought into it in an unconventional way, but clearly she saw something in you. Clearly,
a lot of Adderall.
It's stuck.
What she saw.
Now, how do you even? So how? Because a lot of people that listen, everyone's got hobbies, right? Uh-huh. Now, stand-up's not a hobby. This is something you do. Yeah. But how does someone go from teaching law?
Oh, that's such a fun question.
A hobby to a new profession?
Yeah, I mean. Well, okay. So one thing I have like a kind of, I mean, I guess it's a bit, but it's more of just like bits for me are like running background thoughts that I keep kind of coming back to. And so that's what I mean when I say that, but about like how fun and work are opposites from each other. And now the thing that I used to do for fun is the thing that I do for work. So what do I do for fun? And then I was in an acting class and like there was this like judgment based on a performance. And there was a rubric that the teacher used to judge a performance. And one of the rows in the rubric was about how much fun the performer was having. And there was a spectrum that went from like 0 to 10 or A to F or whatever, F to A. And I got closer to the F and the 0 part, and specifically on fun. And the thing that was circled was that my fun needs work, which I thought was so funny because I was like, what? How do you work on fun? That's like counter, it's an oxymoron, whatever. So that's a thing that I think about all the time is like, how do you work on your fun? But I mean, so I hear that in the question is like, how do you, I mean, on the one hand, the question surface level can be like, how does a thing that became a hobby become a thing that you do professionally? And I think for me, it was hooking into the feeling that I had the moment that I left the stage, which for the first time, and this was like wholly delusional, but I had this vision, okay? Like this was like right after I got off stage, and I had a vision of me being on the Tonight Show and as a guest, okay? Not doing stand-up, but just like on the couch. And Jimmy Fallon asks me, he was like, Liz, like, I don't get it. Like you've been a law professor for a decade and now you're doing stand-up. And it should be noted that I was in my 7th year teaching, okay, at the time. But what I said in the vision, in the daydream, was in response to Jimmy Fallon's question. I said, actually, Jimmy, it was 9 years. Okay. So he says a decade and I say, actually, Jimmy, it was 9 years. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's funny. That's a funny thing, especially from like a former lawyer and law professor, to correct by rounding down from 10 to 9, because who doesn't round up from 9 to 10? But I would never want the credit for the year that I didn't teach. But all of this happened, I want to reiterate, in my 7th year of teaching. Okay, so that happens. That's like March 5th is the first day of 2013 that I ever did stand up. I had the vision like March 5th when I went home, or March 6th. Okay. So then I'm teaching, doing mics and stuff because I had started doing stand up. But about like 11 months later, February 10th of 2014, I get a phone call from the dean of my school, and he's offering all tenured faculty members, which I was one of, buyout packages because like the school was in a budget moment. I believe they're fine now, but like this was the decision of the dean at the time. Wow. And so when a call like that comes in, you have to take down all of the information like on your own piece of paper because they don't want a memo being circulated. Sure. So that like, legal tabloid websites, because there are such things, will like publicize them and think like, oh, this school's going down or whatever. So anyway, so I'm like taking down all of the things that he's saying. And he's like, so the options would be that you could do a halftime or a quarter time, you get this amount of money. And then the last 2 options were, one, he was like, or you could quit at the end of this year. And then the final one was, or you could quit at the end of next year. And I said back to him, I was like, I choose the last one. And he was really confused. And he was like, Liz, like, you get that this isn't like a multiple choice thing where you have to pick one of the options, or else you don't get credit. Like, I literally am just legally obligated to tell you this news. But like, between you and me, you know, this is not like, this is for old people, basically. Like, we just can't say that or else we'll get sued. He didn't say those words exactly.
To get them out.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a move for
retire,
that purpose.
yeah.
Right. Because you can't.
And you're the young buck. Who's like, I'll take you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But for me, it was such a clear moment. And I ended up telling him the exact story that I just told you, because it was 9 years. Because that was my 8th year that I was hearing the news. I had the vision in my 7th year, and then that was going to be 9 years.
It gave you time to plan your departure.
Well, and specifically that I believed in the crazy vision. Because I don't think if I had, because it all came from this joke about rounding down from 10 to 9.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yes, you're right. It did give me the time specifically, but also it was like, it's 9 years. Right?
I just got goosebumps.
You got Tasha goosebumps.
Cool.
Isn't
Thanks.
Oh, I love.
You need a comedy album called 10 to 9. You know what I mean? Or like, you know.
Actually, Jimmy, it was 9 years. Yeah.
But like, I really do believe that people are capable of like tapping in to like a bigger picture universe or whatever.
Right.
And like, that sort of like paying attention to signals, like I do believe that it helps to put you on your right path.
I think so too.
And to give you credit, opportunity is presented, but it's also taken.
Yeah.
You take the opportunity.
Correct.
You're given so many opportunities. People listening, you get opportunities every day that you limit. Oh, well, but it's safer to take this. It's safer to take A, and you took D. You said, no, I'm out. I'm good. This makes sense. You took that opportunity.
But you're also right that that was February of my 8th year teaching. I made the decision to leave at the end of my 9th year teaching. So actually, I was earlier a little bit too dismissive of your point about having the time, because you're right. I also would have had from February through that spring, plus a whole other academic year during which I knew that I was leaving, and also I had a job, right? And I also was going to get like the buyout from that decision. And so it was also like, you're right. It is the time to like continue to get better. And it was like I had time during which I knew that I would be leaving a safe situation for something riskier. But I guess like, yeah, to your point, like, yeah, it's paying attention to the signals, because I could have had that vision and been like, ugh, whatever, dumb. But I held on to it, and I would like constantly tell myself like, don't quit for a bit, especially if you don't even know it's funny, you know? But and I wasn't going to, but it's like, you're right. When the opportunity presented itself, then I was able to see it so clearly because I had held on to the dream. Right. If you don't hold on to the dream, I think you stop seeing it.
It's gone. It's gone.
That's why people keep dream journals so that they can write down as soon as they wake up the things that happen.
Yeah.
I feel like I really would love to keep a dream journal, but I almost feel like it's like playing with a Ouija board. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, do you want all the answers?
Right.
Like, are you ready? Are you ready for the answers to the questions?
There's a class that a friend of mine has taken in LA. The teacher is this woman, Kim Gilligan, and she teaches this like dream creative workshop, and it's supposed to be amazing.
What?
Yeah.
Wait,
so
can I get this info?
Yeah. Because I'm on the mailing list. It's hard to get in. It's like 7 people a month. And so you might try for a few months and not get in, but like eventually I imagine you'll get in. But anyway, I really want to take it. My friend has taken it and loves it. But it emanates from taking down your dreams and, you know, whatever.
There's a reason. I mean, like, your subconscious is working. I mean, it's just in comedy, like nonstop.
Yeah.
Nonstop in my thinking. And Tasha sometimes like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, nothing's wrong. I just have a matrix going through my head. And I don't mean to give that credit to like I've got good things going on, but it's like sometimes you just want to unplug. And dreams will like surface things that need to be done, things that need to be addressed.
The science of dreams is that your brain is categorizing.
Oh, interesting.
Your brain is like, when you go to sleep, during REM sleep, your brain is actually like putting your memories into different boxes and trying to connect the dots for you. That's what dreaming is. It's like your brain making connections that that your consciousness didn't have in the daytime because it's so overwhelmed with all of this stimulus.
Isn't it crazy how you just have to get out of your own way sometimes? You have to get, because you're so the pragmatic sort of the interesting part with lawyers is a lot of lawyers become stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's
Although I have yet to meet a law professor. I've yet to meet anyone who's ever given up tenure.
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
That's huge. Like I've gave up nothing to do stand up.
I don't mean that, but it's no, and I don't mean it in, like with bitterness or anything. I'm just like, if there was such a person, I would love to meet that person, because for me, it's like, yes, there's the lawyer piece of it, but there's also just like the risk taking aspect of like, no, I gave up like literally a job for life.
Steal ovaries, if you don't mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, if I had what you had, Tasha would leave me if I said, I'm going to do this stand-up thing. She'd be like, "Nay, ain't." You know, like it's a very. We're blessed that we haven't had to make those choices that you had to make.
I didn't have to though. I chose it.
But it's still like, my point is like I graduated the business degree. I got fired quickly, and I got into acting and you know, whatever. Like luckily I didn't have to choose between making $300,000 a year. But I think crunching numbers,
right? And I think, you know, but going back to the answer to your prior question, I think this elucidates some of it, because it didn't even feel like a choice. Like the level of clarity that I had on the phone with my dean that day was so intense that I was just like, oh, of course, I pick 9. And he was the one who was like, what?
Any second guessing?
No.
Any family that was like, what the fuck?
Well,
like,
I mean, I have the bit about like, and I'm what kind of prostitute I would be, because the next phone call I made was to my mother. That is real. And she was like, what are you going to do for money? And I was like, oh, I could prostitute. And she was the one who was like, oh, I'm sure that would be successful for you. But anyway, it's like, you know, that was a real conversation that happened. And, my mom is very supportive. Both of my parents are very supportive, but also like very afraid, you know, because it's just like they don't know how to understand like a career in this, you know, because I just, but
it's good for their survival to be afraid is beneficial. Like parents are afraid. They just want you to
they're wired. They just want to take care of you.
Because they just want to know you're okay. They don't care if like you're cashing a check and then being sad because like that's not what you wanted the check to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they just want you to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have like sometimes my dad, if he's like giving me a ride or something, he'll just like start giving these lectures on like, here's how to do stand-up comedy. And, you know, I'll just like start recording. He's like, you need a gimmick. And I'm like, okay.
Thanks for the advice. Yeah, I got it.
And so he's like, the way to do, you have to be for everybody, general, very general. And it's like, my dad's like, wrong. You know? but it's hilarious to me because like he just wants me
dad-splained.
Yeah, right. Like he just wants me to be okay. I think that's exactly right. It's coming from a very good place. You know, like all of these recordings happen when he's like giving me a ride somewhere. Like he's very loving and parental. Yes.
Very special.
Very, very nice. Yes. But it's like funny to me because, you know, my parents just come from this place. My dad a little bit more than my mom. My mom, I think, gets stuff a little bit more. I mean, she's a woman, no offense, but like, you know, I think that does come from it. Like my dad is like, this is how you do. Like, you know, he's just like, you have to have the system. And, you know, like that's kind of his way. I've never like done my dad so much.
Where's he from? Chicago? I don't recognize that.
He's actually Latvian, but he sounds different from anyone he doesn't have like a typical Russian accent, like a Russian accent that like I would think is like Elizabeth. Like he doesn't have that. He just sounds a little bit more Israeli, but he's not from Israel.
Where did they move to in Jersey when they moved here?
They live like in like near New York.
Okay.
Near New York City. Yeah.
Does he speak Hebrew?
No. He speaks Russian. Yeah. But he sounds Israeli.
Yeah, I was wondering if he also spoke Hebrew, and then that would be why he has a like weird accent.
He was in Israel for 6 months. The rest of his family's in Israel because that was like the way of the Exodus at the time that he came to the United States, which was like 45 years ago. But that it doesn't like add up that would be why. He just sounds like that. Like what I've given you is a pretty good impression of him.
Call him up. He's a pretty spot on impression of my dad.
Yeah, it's really good. But it's not good in the sense that like I don't know anyone who sounds like him except for him. So
how cool.
You know, parents, the thing is like, you always want to like knock them. They don't know the new world and this and that. But I think like with this, Tasha and I were looking at this new apartment. It was going to be a bunch of extra money a month. And we were like, both of our moms kind of said the same thing. Like, get it. You'll grow into it. You'll attract all this abundance by having this extra space and all this love. And it was interesting to actually have them say that. Not, you know, when my mom met my stepdad, we lived in a tiny little place and we went from living in apartments all the time, and then finally my stepdad was like the kind of dumb luck guy who was like, no, just let's do it, let's figure it out. And then they moved into a giant place and they attracted all this abundance and the family grew. And it was like, and it was like just the idea that like we don't have to, and it's good for whatever sort of things you're after, whatever you're pursuing in life, the idea for like abundance and growing into a bigger space. Yeah. And knowing that like if you're just gonna try to grow in a tiny pot, you're just gonna be a tiny
like
tree.
Goldfish. You know that about goldfish? That they actually get massive if you put them like in a lake.
Oh,
they
interesting.
get huge.
Huh, I didn't know that.
But if they stay in a bowl their whole life, they stay tiny.
So how big do you want these goldfish? Patreon.com/the SAP. No, but like, and we don't know if we'll get that 2-bedroom, but I was like, fucking, we're gonna have an imp. Well, we don't know. Like, we don't even know.
The guy like didn't. He like told me to send him my email. And he was going to send over an application, and he emailed me and said, what's your email address? Because it was through Craigslist. So you know how Craigslist like hides your email. So I wrote him back my email address, and it's been almost a week and he hasn't sent us the application.
They're
like,
still doing construction.
To give it to someone
and
else?
Tasha's like, this comes with a fridge, right? Because a lot of people don't know in LA, most places don't come with fridges. I think that's an LA specific thing.
I think it is.
And the guy's like, yeah, no fridge. And she's like, you sure? And he's like, yeah, we'll make a fridge happen. And I was like, oh, that's better negotiating than I would have done. Like, we just got a fridge for nothing. But yeah, the idea of us being like, you know, even when we launched the Patreon, just to be like, all right, look, hey, we're going to start releasing more stuff for you guys. Our price points are a little bit higher than I would have liked. $5, $8, $12.
Tasha helped to negotiate.
But honestly, and like the thing is like people don't have to spend it, but they write in and they go, I've upgraded to the $12 price point because we believe in you and we know that this is helping you out and expand. But I want, that's great. Yeah, and no, thank you guys so much for listening. And several of our patrons came to the show today. Yeah, and they're amazing. You know, Vic and Kyle, they drive in and they're all Oz. You know, they're all amazing.
Right.
But the idea of like pursuing, you know, people move to LA, they move to New York, Chicago, these very expensive cities, and then they're trying to pursue something that's not going to pay you for the first decade. Yeah, it's so hard to be creative, and I struggle with this. The years that I worked 60 hours doing Uber, and then I got to go be funny on stage. Yeah, my fucking back hurts, man. And I'm not saying that just to complain. I'm saying like finding the light at the end of the tunnel. Finding like I've always said this. I wish the money I know I'm gonna make could be paid to me in like increments now, so I don't have to do the 40 hours a week side gig that I've done for the last 7 years.
Because it weighs on your psyche more than anything else, and I think that's where you in particular, not to point fingers at you, but you struggle with limitations more recently than you used to. Admittedly, you just said you used to be like more into like self-actualizing,
emanate nonsense. Just give it to me.
But now I feel like you do speak out loud a lot of limitations, and they might be small ones, you know, minor things. But I try to like put my foot down and be like, no, that's just not the way it is.
Right.
Well, it's tough because like, and again, you're right. You're absolutely right. But in my defense, like yesterday, I'm at my side job and I'm talking to a lady and her daughter. They're from Boston. Blah, blah, blah. They know the guys we fucked, girls, Corinne and Christina. I love that. Yeah, and I love that. You remind me of Corinne just in your intonation. I know you're both Jersey. So like, I feel like you guys even sound alike just from being, and it's like they started the podcast when we did. And again, I know this might sound bitter. It takes balls to even like express these emotions. Yeah. Because no, I'm fine. But like it's tough when I'm doing my side gig and I'm happy because I got good tips yesterday and I made $24 an hour and they're millionaires. Yeah. You know, and I don't care what they say, they're fucking millionaires. But also they're best-selling authors because they've got more decibels on the end of that number that downloads.
But I think in terms of, I mean, I know them both, but I know Corinne a little bit more. And it's not like, I mean, we're not like best friends or anything like that, or not even close. But one of the things that I've admired about Corinne, a along that journey is that it seemed that she was like, I mean, I'm sure she's like happier now. And I've heard her say as much that she is full time doing, you know, this podcast and then her other podcast and comedy and writing and, you know, all creative pursuits. But when she was working at the salon that she was working at before, all I heard from her was gratitude. Yeah. About that side job. And so I don't think that's for nothing.
I agree. Absolutely. I agree with you.
You know?
And I know them as I know her as well. And I've done shows with her on the road, and like I totally understand. And I'm not operating on a place of scarcity where like, oh, if they downloaded her podcast, they're not downloading mine. They can listen to both. Sure. It's not that. It's just seeing what someone has, like seeing that they're performing at a place that, you do the math. You see someone's at a club, you go, that's a 600 seater. They're making 40 grand, like, whatever it is. And you go, and then I'm at my side gig, or like when I'm doing a comedy festival, I go to Rogue Island Comedy Festival, my hometown, and people are pushing me out of the way because they're waiting for them to come out from the backstage.
But I think the gratitude about the journey, like there's a lot to find about both of them, but like that to me has always stuck out about, you know, at least Corinne in particular. I don't mean to say not Christina. I just don't know her quite as well, like absolutely. To know all the story. But like, I remember, you know, Corinne's post about when she was finally going to quit. And it was basically like, you know, that her work had taken her out to lunch, like to celebrate the fact that she was leaving, like it was her goodbye lunch. And then if I'm not mistaken, she like got recognized by like a bunch of people in the restaurant, and she's like, that was the moment where I was like, okay, I guess it's fine that I leave this job. But she was like, you know, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this in Big Magic. I don't know if you are into her or anything like that, but like, so she's the author of Eat, Pray, Love, but then she's, you know, done subsequent kind of self-help books that are more like on the nose self-help books, as opposed to like Eat, Pray, Love, which is a journey that became a self-help book kind of thing. But anyway, she talks about, you know, the gratitude for the survival job, you know, and how like it took her, I think also like a lot of time after Eat, Pray, Love was already successful. She was like still, I think it was waiting tables, if I'm not mistaken, but whatever her side job was, like she wasn't willing and ready yet to give that up. And I think that that's maybe significant in terms of the energy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there's the office girl too.
Oh yeah,
the girl from The Office. She like wouldn't quit her waitressing job.
Oh, interesting.
Because she, you know, I think. Well, never mind. I'm not going to put words in her mouth. But yeah, another story. I have a friend who's very religious. She's a Christian. And when she was a single mom, and she had met a guy that she really liked, and she wanted to move into a bigger apartment, and she just started praying every night or every meal whenever she prays a lot, about how thankful she was for her tiny apartment.
Yeah.
You know, just like, I'm so thankful that we have a roof over our head. Yeah. We have food to eat. I'm so thankful that we have this space that is ours.
Right.
And, you know, not about praying because I think it can be detrimental to be looking all directions, to be comparing yourself to others, to be wanting bigger things. Like, of course you should have goals and want things, whatever they are. You're allowed to want things, but I think the second that you forget, oh no, I'm doing fine, I have a good job, my bills are paid, my belly is full, I have a roof over my head,
100%.
Those are the things that you need to be grateful for, and that gratitude attracts more abundance.
I think that's right. I mean, there's like, I think it was a graduation speech that Oprah gave, that I saw like a little tiny excerpt of on somebody's Facebook post years ago. And I remember watching it a few times in a row. And in the speech, Oprah's like, I want to say that it is gratitude for what I already had that got me this. And then she repeated it 2 more times. She's like, let me say that again. Like almost like as if she wanted to be like,
Oprah
listen,
goosies too.
Yeah, like you can do this. And, I mean, the thing is that it is difficult. Even though at least for me, every time I've gotten into that mindset, whether it's a gratitude mindset or an everybody loves me mindset, it is way easier to slip into that. It's almost like a very comfortable new shoe. You know what I mean? Like a slipper where it's like, oh, right, this feels so fun and good and like cozy or whatever. But then sometimes you're like, no, but I need a steel boot. It's not going to work if I'm not going to wear a steel boot. And I think that there's like this addiction, at least that I can relate to, of like that kind of effort and hard work, and you gotta find a gimmick, and you know, to bring it back to my dad, like I think that really runs deep for me, where it's like if I'm not working, like I then it's not going to work is the end of that sentence. But I also have an addiction to starting sentences and not finishing them. But recently, I don't know if I've told you this, but I've talked about it on stage a little bit, but maybe you've been there, maybe you haven't. But between September 4th of 2018 and I think it was like March 20 something.
She's so good with her dates. She knows all of her dates.
Well, I mean, I just didn't know the last one, but yes, in general, I think yes. But anyway, so between that period of time, so like a few month period, I have found 26 fortunes on the ground.
Like fortunes come out of a fortune cookie?
Right, but without the cookie and just on the ground.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
You're recycling fortunes.
You know, I have a framed fortune on my wall.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at it
When
after.
I was little, I collected fortune cookie papers. like
nice.
Full on like boxes of
Do you live
Amazing.
next to a Chinese restaurant or
I
something?
don't. and I have like, I started a spreadsheet just to like, because it was getting to be so abundant that I was like, I don't want to forget this. Like I would take a picture with my phone, but I was like, I should really like have them in an album, and I should make a spreadsheet, and you know, just to kind of remember all of these helpful messages, because first of all, they're so much better than like any fortune I've found in a cookie, you know, because I feel like 9 times out of 10 I'll find a fortune in a cookie and be like, this isn't a fortune. Like you're a
I would
nice
say
person.
the quality of fortunes have
like
gone
suck.
down over the years.
But I can share if you want, because it's a Google sheet.
Please
I can
do.
share the spreadsheet where I have the fortunes.
Do they lose their value if you let other people see the fortune?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I would hoard
Stop
that.
being superstitious.
Hoard that shit.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, maybe, but I think it's fine. And they've just been like so fun for me to find. And also they're so good. But the reason that I started on this train is that on November 24th of 2018, I found one. It was right outside of the Pack Theater. So not a Chinese restaurant nearby to my knowledge. It was right outside of the bodega that's like almost next door to the Pack, you know? Mm-hmm. And I turn it over, and they're always like, you know, hiding, you know what I mean? Like, because there's a lot of false positives in the business of finding fortunes on the ground, like straw wrappers and like little pieces of paint or caulk or anything like that. But anyway, so I turn it over, and it says, your effortless humor will help someone in need. And I remember thinking like, because a lot of them are thinkers, you know, just to give you an idea, because like they'll say something, but they'll say it in a weird way. Like I got one, I'm not sure if I can remember the date. I want to say it's March 11th, but I could be off on that. We can check the spreadsheet. And if anyone from Patreon wants the link to the spreadsheet, I am happy to share.
Give the Patreon members the fucking...
Yeah, but
cool.
they'll have to just like reach out, because otherwise I don't know how to share it like publicly or whatever. But anyway, so but there was one, this to the point of the weird way of how some of these fortunes say things. It was, you will step on the soil of many countries, which like is a weird way to say travel. Right?
Yeah.
You could just say travel, but what do you do to a stage? You step on a stage. And so I've like taken meaning from, you know, the way that they've said the things. But anyway, going back to your effortless humor will help someone in need. Like anytime I get one of these, I really put a lot of meaning on it. Like in the sense that I do feel, whether it's true or not, and I would never know, at least during the time I'm alive in this world, whether they were in fact intended for me or not. But like, it's pretty fun, right? To like get a message. Like, I'm like, this is so for me. Like, who's watching me? But anyway, like the effortless humor, I think about a lot, because like it's in terms of like the, you know, going back to the question that I feel like I've gone back to the most that you've asked about, how does something that's a hobby become a job? It gets difficult, I think, for me at least, especially because I do have like a work ethic. I like to try hard. I like to succeed. I'm a good student. You know what I mean? Where I want to do a good job. But sometimes having too much effort can promote the opposite of like what you're intending. And that's not to say don't get up on stage, don't listen to your sets, don't don't try. It doesn't mean that. But like there is this kind of balance, and I think it's not dissimilar from the balance of like caring what people think, but then also assuming that they love you. I think it's sort of in that same family of like the effortless humor is the thing that can help someone, not because you're not trying at your job, but because ultimately you can rest on the fact that you're enough.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Effortless because you've done all the work to like to kind of flex your muscle
maybe
as to who you are.
Yeah.
So by the time you get on stage, you go, I got this.
Or effortless because it's not about you.
Yeah, that's a helpful thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I read
it's
like
not for you. It's just a thing.
Well, it's to help someone in need. That's what the fortune says, at least.
Yeah. Or even if it's not to help someone in need, it's just, even if it's just a throwaway.
Right.
It's not, it's almost like it's detachment.
Yeah.
It's like.
Totally.
Read the book, The Talent Code, and it was kind of like the precursor to the War of Art. And it's the idea that when you're learning how to play a G chord on a guitar, it's
the literal only chord I know how to play.
Yeah, and I don't know anything. That you build a myelin, which is like what hardens a neural pathway in your brain.
That is actually also what covers your myelin sheaths.
That's what it is.
Like eroding is what MS is.
Oh,
it's exposed nerve endings.
Which is probably why
sheaths like
comics' brains age very well, because I know probably some people think of like the degenerates, but like when you think of a comic like a George Carlin or something, they're in their 70s. They're like really just sharp. They're sharp, and it's because their neural pathways between their thought and their reflexes. I mean, their processes are amazing.
Interesting.
And the talent code's idea is that look, hey, like if I want to learn, I've been working on that alpha male joke about how many eggs in the fridge.
Yeah.
I have to just say it in the car slowly the way I want to say it. So when it's time to rattle it off, it's effortlessly.
Right.
I couldn't say toxic masculinity on I didn't do a joke today, but I had a joke where like I say toxic masculinity and I had a hard time getting that word out. I had to
sometimes that happens. Yeah.
I had to sound it out.
Yeah.
Just like when I'm learning notes when I used to play saxophone, you have to sound it out, and then you can really hit the run.
Right. You know that like the science about your neural pathways, just like you were saying about repetition and doing it over and over, is applicable to like having a positive outlook.
Yeah.
Or like attitudes of abundance or whatever, because you were talking about gratitude, like the shoes. Yeah. You know how it's so easy to slip back into that sort of lower vibration energy where you're like thinking more pessimistic thoughts or whatever, because it's a popular way of living, like it's not popular to have gratitude and be abundant and think positive thoughts. I mean, I guess it's not unpopular, but it's not as easy as like the sort of negative, constant barrage world that we live in. That's like, woe is me. And if you're thinking those thoughts all the time, it's like a river through a canyon. Yeah. Like the more the thought runs through the canyon, the river runs through the canyon, the deeper and deeper and deeper it gets. So the more that you're in the habit of those sort of like lazy thoughts, then that's the deepest river, the easiest way for the thought to go, versus like the more effort you put into having a positive thought or a positive outlook every day, the deeper and deeper that canyon gets until it gets easier, until it's your first choice.
That's what makes it feel effortless, is because you're effortless because you've already done this so many times. Even if it's a new bit, you've already expressed yourself so many times on stage that you just know the way you like. Tasha, even, I mean, like, you get what you pay for. People, if you hire like a shit model, they're not going to know how to pose. It sounds stupid, but like you put Tasha for 10 seconds in front of a photographer, she gives him 15 different, she's doing we did a shoot together. I got my thumbs in my pockets. I'm standing there and she's doing all these different things. I'm like, yeah. She does it effortlessly. She knows what she's doing. Yeah. And it's about swimming down that stream effortlessly because you've been there before. Pretend like and you kind of have to pretend you've been there before until you have so many times that it's like, put me up on stage. When do you want to go up? Doesn't matter. I got it. Heckler? Doesn't matter. I got it. You've dealt with the hecklers. You know what you're going to get. Yeah,
that's true. And then there's this Stephen Colbert quote from I don't know where, but it was like about basically like, similar to what you're saying, that But I thought it was interesting because he says that like pessimism and cynicism masquerades as intelligence. And so there's this attraction, at least at a surface level, that those types of attitudes have, because there's this way that somebody's like, well, you know, if I'm cynical, then that's going to make me look smarter.
It's safe.
Yeah, I identify with that, especially as a former academic, because there definitely was this way, like if somebody's giving a paper, you know, defending a paper, whatever, that like, and I was as guilty of this as anybody else, of just like the best way to ask a question is to like tear down the thesis statement. But the hardest way to pose a question is to add to it, to be like, okay, assuming you're right, what about this? And what about this? And it's like, you know, that like, especially, I just take that as an arena because it's one that I used to be in. And so it's familiar to me. And because it's one where it's very much about like people trying to look smarter in front of colleagues. And sometimes your job depends on it, especially if you're a pre-tenure, you know, professor in a tenure track environment. You want like, these are the people who are going to vote for your tenure. And like, it does matter that you make them believe that you're smart. But just this idea that like that kind of cynicism is attractive because it seems like and masquerades as intelligence.
It's almost part of the...
I mean, what I have to say doesn't really matter, but it's like if you think about it just in like a daily life sort of situation, like if you're just happy and positive all the time and you always expect things to go well, that's not really how the world works.
Like a Pollyanna kind of attitude.
There are lots of things that could go wrong.
Sure.
So it is like having some cynicism is smart, you know, to like hope for the best but plan for the worst sort of thing. So if someone's coming at, you know, it makes sense that that's just part of
that's not even cynicism. That's like you're preparing for the worst. Exactly. That's a cautious outlook. But like, and Conan said the same thing when he was being kicked off the Tonight Show.
Okay.
He was being kicked off the Tonight Show and he just, please don't be cynical. Like cynicism is just like the cancer in this industry.
Yeah.
And it's so important to be, I mean, like, it's you know, with political issues going on in the world, it's easy for people to say like, I'm on this side, I'm on that side.
Sure.
But like, be the guy who questions everything.
Yeah.
Question everything, but not in a negative way. Just question everything. Like, why are we thinking this way? What are we doing? And it's like crazy sometimes that you think comics are the last bastion, and I don't mean this in like an entitled way, but like we're like out there like, are we fucking really? This is it? We're the only people wondering like what's going on out here? Everyone else just picked their team already?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. We're at 100 minutes. We got to get out of here. We're at 94 minutes.
This was so wonderful.
We have so much more to talk to you about, but we'll just have to have you on another time if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Will you be like a local? We love when our guests come back and keep updating us on life.
I'd love to. Yeah.
I want share your dates. Where are you going to be? I know you're going to be back in New York. You're back and forth all the time, right?
I am. Yeah, my girlfriend lives there, so I go back and forth. I don't have anything specific that I'm promoting, but you know, if you go to my Instagram, which is at Liz Glaser, I do a monthly flyer at the beginning of the month, and then you know, for shows I will update like the stories or sometimes a post. And so if somebody wants to come to a show and they happen to be in the area, I think it's pretty easy to find me.
And I don't mean to embarrass you, but I loved the post that you said where you know, I mean, all comics are trying to make a full-time fledged living off of this. And you posted that this month you were able to like make more money than not off of stand-up, like different shows. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
It's not something that goes unnoticed in the community, that like you're sharing that positivity of saying,
I
like,
meant
I
it
can
that
do this.
way. I definitely meant it that way. And when I was posting it, I was like, I hope that this like comes across the way that I intend it, which isn't like, I'm really rich and, you know, able to do. I was just like, well, this is what I set out to do as a goal. And you know, I mean, basically,
attitude of gratitude. I mean, it really is important to celebrate those little blessings.
I think, thank you for validating in that specific way. But like in September of 2018, I started making monthly flyers. Basically, I started then because I mean, I was moving then. So like sometimes moving gives a shift of one kind or another. But I think it was just that I looked at my calendar at the end of August and I was like, I have a not embarrassing amount of or number of shows for September. So I'll like make a flyer.
It's not like one date.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
More
and
of a
so I was
title
like,
than a flyer.
right, exactly. And so I was like, oh, I'll make a flyer. And then when I did it, I had in mind, I was like, this is a good practice because now that I know that there's a flyer to be made for the first of every month, then it's almost like the flyer becomes part and parcel of the goal, because it's like, yes, I want to do your show, but also, and like your show is actually an example of something that always happens, which is that the month starts, but then I'll get a show added, which is totally fine. And it's like, but it's also to your point of like being grateful for the shows that I have. So then there's an abundance. I've never had a month where I haven't had added shows after making the flyer. Yeah. So that's something
we just don't book the show that far in advance.
No, I know. Or I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that happens like every month and that's totally great. And obviously the point is not the flyer. I understand that, but it's fun that the point has become at least a little bit the flyer because it's like fun to know.
You're checking out your water levels.
Right.
We made it this high this month.
Yeah. And my girlfriend did like a pick stitch, with all of the flyers recently. Like we were together and she was like, look at how many shows you had on flyers, like since you started making flyers. And it's just like, it's really just like the gratitude for the shows that are happening, like celebrating when they are. People do come when I've like, not always, but like every now and then somebody will be like, oh, well, I saw, that I was going to be in the same place and you posted. So I came, So, anyway, so when I started that practice in September of 2018, which coincidentally, for those of you date people, those who are like me listening and following along, it's also the month that I started finding the fortunes. Yeah. But I had the goal. I was like, it would be cool to have, in a year's time, the same number or whatever, like the number of shows is fine, but like having them be paying gigs also.
Absolutely.
So it was cool to meet that goal.
Now okay, I know we gotta go, but I want to ask you this, like what now that I produce them and most of the show, I get hit up by all these people that want to be on shows, and some of them are like,
it's a lot,
very fresh into comedy. I'm like, geez, the balls for you to even ask for a spot.
I know,
because I'm just like, my Catholic guilt's like, I've done stand up for 7 years. I have every right to be on a lot of stages, and I still don't ask for certain stage time. But like, what's your strategy? What's your unapologetic look at like asking for things? Because we all know if you don't ask for stage time, sure, people are gonna be like, we love you, but there's so many. There's so many
people might not think you're interested.
Yeah.
But what's your strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question.
What's your mentality and all that?
I mean, okay, so I had a show on August 6th. And it was fine, but it was like one that I felt like I kind of reached, not necessarily that the show was like above my level, but just like I wasn't super friends with the people who made it. And then I did like only okay. And as a result, I felt really bad because I was like, ugh, I feel like I basically begged to be on this show.
And then like let them down.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to repeat that again. And so ever since then, and again, like it's not that I've never, done a thing that was anti this rule, but like if I wouldn't feel comfortable going up to the person in person and looking them straight in the eye and being like, hey, Dave, you know how we know each other and I can ask you a question and you'd be like, also, Liz, you're acting weird. I'm like, you're right, because we know each other. Can I be on your show? If I wouldn't be able to do that to a person who I actually have like a human to human connection with, who's seen me because I've seen them at mics, at shows, whatever.
And you believe that you deserve to be there. Like this person is going to agree with you and they're going to want to give you a chance.
Then I don't do it.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that, it's never something that I've done, but like really for the most part, that is the case.
But that's like, you want to be undeniable for that next level to be like, oh, do this show.
I guess the only exception is when I've like traveled but even then usually what's happened, like I was going to San Francisco in October and I was in New York before I was in San Francisco. I did a mic, I did good on the mic, and there was somebody in the audience. I was there with a friend of mine. My friend knew I was going to San Francisco. And then this other person who was a comic who used to live in San Francisco was also at the mic performing and in the audience. And she was like, oh, you're going to San Francisco? I will totally message this other, couple people because I just saw you and she, sent a really nice email and whatever. And then I got booked on some shows in San Francisco. And so I just I have kind of it's sort of, like driving, like where it's like, you don't want to slam on the gas, but you don't want to not hit the gas at all. You know what I mean?
Like you don't want to be too tentative.
Yeah.
But that comes with like being self-assured.
Right.
Of just like staying in your lane, focusing on your stuff, doing your thing.
Like I don't want to get something that's like, oh my God, I got on this show. Like unless it's like, a booker from the Tonight Show is like, hey Liz, I've been watching you. Like, yes, I will be nervous.
It's because you rise with your peers.
Yeah,
like
right.
if we're doing a show and a few other people are doing a show, I love nothing more when I'm hosting a show where I know the whole fucking lineup.
Yeah, of course.
There's so many shows where I do and I don't know the lineup. I'm like, how do I pronounce this person's name? Like today was a perfect example where I'm not kidding. And again, with the whole like guys we fucked thing, it's not bitterness so much as a reverse engineering that I'm doing where I'm like, I know we're doing all the same X's and O's, so what do I do to get to where you are?
Right.
But with the producing a show, it's like I am so grateful not just for the audience, but for the comics, the level of comics of friends that are mine that I can hug and say like, you're going to like this guy. And I'm like vouching for them.
Right.
And I don't have to be like faking it where like some shows you just don't know that you're going to love this next dude. And then you're like,
never met.
And then you, and then
never seen.
Yeah. It turns out it's like the wrong, it's like, it's Jordan, but it's a female. And you're like, I thought it was a guy and whatever.
Right,
and it's like, we've all done that. We've literally misgendered the person I'm bringing up just because I'm like, you're going to love them. And it's a woman. But it's, the idea of just like, like within sales, they tell you like you have to ask the customer for the job. You have to ask them because like you can pitch them all you want, but like you have to make them choose. And
I do ask, but it's like
because I don't often. My pride gets in my way.
Oh, interesting.
And I'd rather work my side job 40 hours than be like, hey, can I do your show sometime?
Oh no,
but think about what you're telling the universe by having that mindset.
Oh, I know. I want that. I want to be able to be like, I belong on your stage. I know what I'm doing. And I have certain friends and guys like Bobby in the Valley, in the Lancaster, where I'm like, let me on your show. I know I go up there and bring it. I know I do. I've proven myself. And they go, who the fuck are you? Why aren't you doing more? And I'm not, and again, I'm sorry, like if like for my comic friends, Channing listens. He's probably like, fuck you, Dave.
Making this
my
about
buddies
you.
My buddies are like, fuck you. But like, I've had those people come up and they go, Dave, like, why? I'm surprised you don't perform more.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, me too.
Well, I think
but
it's
I'm not
also,
asking, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think asking is a good idea. I certainly do it, but assuming the rule that I just stated, like unless I would be able to like, do it that way. And the other thing is I found that as I've asked more, I've had to ask less. Does that make sense? And so I remember it was like a little over a year ago that I made a resolution. It was March of 2018 that I was like, I'm going to message people for 10 minutes a day about stand-up. And I was actually I do Debtors Anonymous. I go to a lot of anonymous programs. And so in Debtors Anonymous, there was like this like game that people were playing where you pick activities that like you want to do. Like, some people were like meditating or whatever, do it for 10 minutes a day. And then you get points for some game. And one of my activities to do for 10 minutes a day was message people about stand-up shows. And so I did it then. And I still do it. I don't do like strict adherence to the 10 minutes a day rule. But one thing I've noticed since then is I've gotten on a lot more shows since then. And I mean, my like main mentor in stand up is Mike Kaplan, and Mike Kaplan, in addition to being an amazing comedian, is also has an amazing work ethic. Like Mike Kaplan is, yes, he headlines and he gets paid and does, a lot of high level comedy, etc. But like one of the things I know from being his friend is like he is on stage as much as he can be. And that to me was like a really amazing thing to see in a mentor, especially for somebody who's been doing it for 16, 17 years and has as many trophies as he does and is as good as it as he is and as thoughtful about it as he is. But also he's asking people to be on shows and he's, doing 3 shows a night. And it doesn't matter, if it's like for 4 people in a pizza place in Brooklyn, you know what I mean? Like, and that I think more than a lot of other things is really instructive for me in terms of like how to build a career. And so, I ask to be on shows because I look at my calendar a month out, and I'm like, okay, like the goal is, yes, to populate the flyer, because that's been sort of a side game of it, but also
Populate the flyer.
yeah, but also, and I invite people to steal that way of thinking about,
It's a great visual.
Yeah,
way.
it's
like, a representation.
Right.
I'm such a visual person.
Me too.
My calendar is very important to me.
Yes.
I would be dead without it.
Yeah.
I just need all of the things written down and organized, and I organize my finances like that too. Where I want to see.
She prints everything out. Nothing's online.
Yeah.
She has a hard. She's a psycho.
I do hard calendar.
Yeah, it's
paper,
important for me to see it because
too,
it helps me to conceptualize, understand where I'm meeting my goals, where I'm falling short. It helps me to be thankful for things. This past week, I had a job where I'm not the main girl. I was subbing for somebody, but I was looking at it and I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't have worked at all this week if it wasn't for this job. So it made me very appreciative of the fact that they call me all the time to fill in for people.
Right.
So I feel like it's good to see the evidence.
Yeah. I like that too.
You don't ever have to ask. You don't work in a world, and I don't blame you. You don't have to. When's the last time you asked for a gig? You either get it or you don't. You go to an audition.
But there are other things that I do have to ask for. There's this photographer that I've been following for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
That I really like her work, and I want to shoot with her. So I have to ask her to set up a shoot.
Sure.
I don't know if she's gonna be down or not. She doesn't know me, but we kind of know some of the same people. But I don't know how.
I want to challenge you to what's the word? Populate your poster. What was populate? I want to challenge you, Tasha.
Populate my Instagram.
For the audio, I'm pointing at Tasha because there is something you love very much. Now, Tasha's, and we are wrapping up. I know the audience.
Yeah.
We're not done yet.
We're shut up.
Tasha's bread and butter right now is fit modeling. She works with all these different designers, and she's really good at in fashions with being able to tell them what works and not. And then
cool.
they make their clothes off of her. She's one of the busiest in the world.
Amazing.
Who does this. You can only,
that's awesome.
Yeah, but with that said, there is a beauty to what you get out of working with a photographer, going somewhere on a hike or a shoot somewhere and doing all that, Tasha. And that's something that doesn't always pay right away. So I'm challenging you to ask more people that you want to work with you. Because I believe in you.
Well, sometimes, it's just like you with stand-up. Sometimes it's fun to do things that don't pay anything. Sometimes it's more fulfilling to get to, be outside your comfort zone and, getting a little creative and outside the box, even if it's...
But don't be afraid.
Putting money in your pocket.
We've got friends that do photography and they haven't shot you, and I know you're like, fuck them. I get it. It's just I've got friends who run stand-up shows and they haven't put me on. I go, what the fuck are you doing? Don't you know I do this shit? I get it.
Yeah.
But... populate your calendar with those things because you don't need any extra of the paying jobs. You've got that. It's working for you. But I want to see you more express yourself and because you always have fun. Sometimes you hate the photographer and you're like, this douchebag didn't know how to take a photo. But a lot of times, even if you hate it, you get one or two really good things, and then your Instagram reflects that by all the new work that you've done, and then you get to travel the world. We've got to do gigs because you've had so much fun doing that, for all these anyway. I'm taking the heat off.
Challenge accepted. Yeah.
Thank you. High five.
I'll take one too.
I'll high five you. Populate your calendar. What did you originally say? Populate your poster.
Flyer.
Populate your flyer.
Yeah.
Everyone out there, populate your flyer.
Yeah.
It's at Liz Glaser.
Yeah.
That's a Z, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two
sorry.
Z's. Yeah.
Oh,
Liz and then Glazer.
Liz Glaser, two Z's. Thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Thank
Come
you
back
for having me.
anytime.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And hopefully when I'm in New York, I'll run into you. I'll come to one of your shows because the first 2 nights
That's
are
awesome.
empty. But I'm doing
You
3.
got to populate your calendar, babe.
I am, but I'm also excited. I'm going to go see some of my favorite podcasts. I'm going to go see, You Know What, Dude, and a few other podcasts. I'm just going to go hang out while I'm in New York.
Nice.
And then I'm flying to Boston. Tasha's meeting me in Boston. She's
fun.
flying from LA.
Fun.
We're going to get to Boston. Then we're going to go see my fucking family, my cousins, my nieces, and my nephews, everybody. I cannot wait to eat some clam chowder with my family.
For sure.
We survived the mimosa show today. There's
It was
a
so
new
good.
street built on Western Avenue.
Yeah.
We literally started the day with no road and we ended the set with a fucking street. You killed
I think
it.
metaphorically, maybe that's something that I'm going to make meaning out of. Because this was really,
Boom.
for me, it was very much a comeback set from a bad week.
Oh, good.
And do you feel good about it?
I do feel good about it. And also, like, at the end, there's like a paved road. That's gotta mean something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
People think
so.
I'm exaggerating when I say the stage was shaking. There was a dude.
Oh, yeah,
there were
that's
literally
true.
gigantic trucks driving
It was
by.
vibrating.
Putting a road down. And
Yeah.
anyway, I could talk all day about it. But thank you so much for being on. Everybody, this is the SAP. Bye.
Bye.
Now we're finished.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
We'll do a photo together and then
Yes. Amazing.
SAP, baby.
Well, that was our episode with Liz, Tasha Courtney, and myself, Dave Neal. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You know, these long episodes, if we're feeling fun, we're having a good time, we're just going to let it record. You know what I mean? I hope it doesn't scare you away. Some of you guys are like, well, cue it at 40 minutes. Look, the longer the podcast, the more entertaining we are to ourselves, and we hope that translates to you guys. Trying not to inundate you with advertisements. There's no advertisements for the show. Can you imagine? But you're still listening. So this is where I plead for you guys. If you want more content, if you can't get enough, go to our patreon.com/thesap. That's patreon.com/THESAP. It's where we are releasing all of our new bonus content. We're releasing extra bonus solo episodes, card casts, interviews that I'm doing with the other podcasts we're putting on there, like behind the scenes content, and also the monthly stand-up show. This month's stand-up show is going to be insane. I'm not lying. We talked about it during the episode. There was a literal road being built during the show, but the audio is going to be fine. You're just going to hear some beep, beep every once in a while. But anyway, it's a blast. You know, we've had, all of our past comics like Dat Fan, who you can see in season 2 of the OA, but also, dude fucking won the first season of Last Comic Standing. We got him to do our stand-up show. So, ton of amazing comics. Joe Welke, all these awesome comics. Liz Glaser, as you just heard her, did our stand-up show, so you can listen to all of them on the stand-up. I'm going to try to release that for this Friday. So if you're listening, that'll be, what the fuck date is it today? The 14th? So I'll release that in a couple days, April 14th, maybe the 19th or whatever. Anyway, this coming Friday, we'll have new content for you guys. So you're getting at least one new piece of content every week, and every dollar you donate is going towards building our podcast empire, getting us to focus on our creativity. We appreciate you guys so much. If you just want to make single donations or buy some of our homemade soap or just say hi, let us know. All new patrons get a handwritten postcard from us. We have a new friend named George. George the cat. Is that his name, George? George the cat just took a selfie. We'll send our postcards to your animals. Fuck it. Fuck you guys. You got a dog or a cat who wants a postcard? Boone over here will write it. He's got a good working paw. He doesn't need opposable thumbs. We'll get him to lick the stamp. Should we get Boone to press his fingerprint, his paw print onto the postcard? Anyway, folks, I'm rambling. This was a long episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, if you can find the time, energy, or funds in your heart, go to patreon.com/thesap. And also, if you don't have the funds, go to the SAP on Patreon anyway. I'm trying to do some public posts too. I'm putting some blog posts on there as well. So go check out what we've been creating. It has been a humbling and rewarding venture the last 2 months doing the Patreon, and I am so grateful for our dozen out there who have subscribed and have been active Patreon members. We appreciate you guys so much. But again, keep on enjoying this free content, and I hope you love this one. Share with your friends. And if you haven't yet, I know I'm asking for a lot, go to iTunes, write a review, leave us some love. Thank you guys. Bye.
SAP.